Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going way back, like way back, 12th century England. We're diving into a historical mystery that's got it all. Bizarre details, conflicting accounts, and it's never been solved.
Sounds intriguing. What's on the docket today?
The Green Children of Woolpit? Ever heard of them?
I can't say I have.
Yeah.
Green Children, that's a new one.
Buckle up, because it's a wild ride. Just picture it. It's the year 1150.
Okay, so no cars, no electricity?
None of that. We're talking about a tiny village called Woolpit, surrounded by these dense, kind of creepy forests. Life was tough back then. Now imagine you're a villager just working in the fields, sun's beating down.
So it's pretty standard for the time.
Right, until, out of nowhere, two kids stumble out of the woods. But these aren't your average kids, they're green.
Wait, hold on. Green? Like actually green?
Oh yeah, green skin, the whole deal. Not just a little pale, but like full-on leafy green.
Now that's what you call an entrance. They must have caused quite the stir.
You can say that again. People were shocked, obviously. But here's where it gets even weirder.
Let me guess. They started speaking in Klingon.
Not quite, but close. They couldn't understand a word anyone was saying. People tried talking to them, but their language sounded like complete gibberish.
Yeah.
And get this, they refused to eat anything except raw beans.
Raw beans. That's a pretty specific diet.
Right. It's like someone plucked them from a different planet and dropped them right into the middle of a harvest.
Okay, I'm hooked. But seriously, 12th century England. People were a lot more superstitious back then,
Yeah.
weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about a time when belief in fairies and magic was super common. Rumors of the unknown were everywhere. People were easily spooked by anything outside the ordinary.
So you can imagine how this story, with its green children and their sudden appearance, would have freaked people out.
Oh, totally. It spread like wildfire. And the craziest part, even after centuries, no one knows for sure where these kids came from or why they were green.
So what are we thinking? Bizarre medical condition.
Yeah.
Visitors from another dimension. Don't hold out on me now.
We've got a whole stack of theories to dig through. Some are pretty plausible, while others, well, let's just say they require a bit more imagination.
All right, let's hear them. What's the first stop on our deep dive into the Green Children of Woolpit?
Our journey starts, like most historical investigations do, with the Chronicles. We've got two main sources for this story, William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall.
Chroniclers, so not exactly eyewitnesses.
True, they were writing a few decades after this whole thing supposedly went down, but they were respected guys, gathered info from people who claimed to have actually met the children.
Always got to consider the source. So what do these chronicles have to say? Spilled the beans.
Well, both William and Ralph agreed on the basics. The green skin, the strange language, the whole raw bean diet thing. But there are some pretty interesting differences in their accounts.
Ah, the plot thickens. Inconsistent details are kind of my bread and butter in this line of work. What kind of discrepancies are we talking?
For example, William of Newburgh, he says the children were found near a wolf pit, which some folks think is how Woolpit got its name. But then you've got Ralph of Coggeshall, who claims they were found in a ditch.
A ditch. That seems a bit underwhelming for a couple of green kids.
Right. You'd think they'd at least arrive on a flying chariot or something.
So are we thinking these inconsistencies are just embellishments? You know how stories can get exaggerated in the retelling?
That's always a possibility. But then again, maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe these discrepancies hold the key to unraveling the whole mystery.
Now you've got me really curious. What other clues are we working with? Did these kids ever reveal where they came from?
Well, the girl, she eventually learned to speak English. And when she did, she told a story that was even more incredible than her appearance. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land.
St. Martin's Land. Never heard of it.
That's because, according to her, it was an underground world, always shrouded in this kind of eerie twilight.
An underground world. Now we're getting somewhere. What else did she say about it? Were there talking mushrooms? Little green people.
Don't get too carried away. Unfortunately, the details about this St. Martin's Land are super sketchy.
Ugh, always the way, isn't it? The juiciest parts are always the vaguest. All right, lay it on me. What do we know?
Well, the girl said the sun never fully rose there, and that everything, including the people, was green.
So she's essentially describing a subterranean paradise. I'm starting to see why this story has stuck around for so long. It's like something out of a fairy tale.
Right, but here's the thing. She also mentioned that they were tending their father's flocks when they somehow wandered into a cave, heard a sound, and boom, they popped out in Woolpit.
Okay, so we've got green kids, a language barrier, and a tale about a hidden underground kingdom. Where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, before we jump headfirst into the more outlandish theories, and trust me, we'll get there, let's start with some of the more grounded explanations for the Green Children of Woolpit.
Sounds like a plan. Let's separate fact from fairy tale, shall we? So one of the more, let's call them down-to-earth theories, centers around a condition called, well, it's got a mouthful of a name, hypochromic anemia, sometimes called chlorosis.
Okay, and that is, don't worry, I'm sure our listeners appreciate the layman's terms breakdown.
Basically, really bad iron deficiency. We're talking, it can actually make your skin look kind of greenish.
Now that you mention it. Wasn't there something about the girl's green skin fading after she started eating a more regular diet?
You're sharp.
Yeah, that's one of the details that's led some folks to think, hey, maybe these kids were just severely malnourished.
Makes sense. Malnutrition back in 12th century England, sadly, probably not that unusual.
Exactly. Not a walk in the park back then. But that still leaves us with some head scratchers. Like, what about their gibberish language and the whole St. Martin's Land story?
Right, those are pretty big details to just hand wave away.
True, true. But think about it this way. Communication back then, not exactly smartphones and instant translation apps.
Fair point.
Now, toss in two terrified kids, maybe traumatized even, speaking a dialect nobody around them understands. It's not a huge leap to think their words would sound like, well, gibberish.
So instead of magical green beings, we might just have a couple of lost, scared kids suffering from a lack of iron. Less exciting than a portal to another dimension? I'll grant you that. But hey, history's full of surprises. Though, while we're on the topic of more plausible explanations, there's another theory I gotta run by you.
Hit me with it.
What if these weren't just any last kids? What if they were Flemish immigrants?
Flemish? No, why does that ring a bell?
Ah, you're remembering. It ties into that whole St. Martin's Land thing. See, there's this village, Fornham St. Martin, not too far from Woolpit, and guess who lived there?
Flemish folks.
Bingo. Big Flemish community. And, this is key, they faced a lot of prejudice back then.
So you're thinking, maybe these kids weren't so much escaping a mystical underground realm, but escaping very real danger. And their St. Martin's Land was actually a jumbled memory of their home village.
Right. I mean, think about it. If you're a kid and you've been through something traumatic, your memories can get kind of warped. The perpetual twilight the girl described could have just been dense forest cover as they made their escape.
Wow, that paints a very different picture, and a pretty heartbreaking one, if you think about what these kids might have gone through.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a new perspective on the whole story, doesn't it? But we'd be remiss if we didn't at least touch on the elephant, or should I say green alien, in the room.
You're talking about the extraterrestrial theory, aren't you? You promised me aliens.
I did, didn't I? All right, let's indulge those sci-fi cravings a bit. The idea that these kids were visitors from another planet is definitely a newer theory. Probably gained traction more recently, what with all our modern-day alien obsession and whatnot.
And let's be real, it's got all the makings of a classic alien encounter. Green skin, weird language. I bet some folks even pictured tiny spaceships hidden in those 12th century forests.
Oh, I'm sure. But as fun as it is to imagine little green children popping out of wormholes, we got to be honest with ourselves. There's zero, and I mean zero, evidence to back that up.
So space-traveling toddlers are probably out of the question.
Afraid so. But, you know, getting caught up in the most outlandish explanations sometimes makes us miss the bigger picture.
That's a good point. So what can we learn from a story like this? Why should we even now care about two green children who popped up in a field centuries ago?
Man, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So what can we learn from a story like this? Why should we, even now, care about two green children who popped up in a field centuries ago?
Well, for me, it's a good reminder. Like, history isn't just names and dates in a textbook, you know?
It's about real people and real mysteries, for sure.
Exactly. In this case, the Green Children of Woolpit, it forces you to admit that we don't have all the answers. And maybe that's okay.
You're saying there's something kind of refreshing about a good unsolved mystery.
Totally. It keeps us humble, reminds us to approach the past, and maybe even the present, with a little less certainty and a lot more curiosity.
So we should embrace the unknown, even if it means accepting that some things might never be fully explained.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes just digging into these mysteries, even if we never find those concrete answers, it can teach us a lot about how people thought back then, what they feared, what they believed.
Like you were saying earlier about the Flemish immigrant theory. Even if that's not what truly went down, just thinking about that possibility, It shines a light on a piece of history that's often overlooked.
Right. These weren't just abstract concepts. These were real people dealing with very real prejudices. And their stories, even if they're wrapped in layers of myth and legend, they deserve to be heard.
It makes you wonder how many other stories are out there, lost to time or hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to dust them off and take another look.
Countless, I'd wager. Every old document, every local legend, every crumbling inscription, they're all potential windows into the past, just waiting for someone to peek through.
And sometimes those windows, they show us something truly bizarre, like a couple of green kids hanging out in a field.
Exactly. It's those little historical head-scratchers, those unsolved mysteries that keep the past alive. They remind us that history was messy and weird and full of surprises, just like life today, really.
Sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction. Well said. And on that note, we'll leave our listeners to ponder the enigma of the Green Children of Woolpit. Were they victims of circumstance, travelers from a hidden realm, or just a product of overactive medieval imaginations?
Who knows? But it sure is fun to think about.
That's the beauty of a good mystery. It keeps us guessing, keeps us exploring, keeps us connected to the past in ways we never thought possible. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with another intriguing tale from the annals of history. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and who knows, maybe you'll stumble upon a historical puzzle or two of your own.